At exactly 9 p.m., a woman picked up her phone and dialed 3 numbers.
Emergency, 39 Hillsborough Street. I can't find my baby.
Take a seat. This is just the genesis of this case. The call went on, without a scream, not with panic. She sounded almost calm while describing her daughter. She said,
She wore a pink Minnie Mouse pajamas, has pink beads and braided hair, a little girl who likes to play by the chicken coop.
She told the dispatcher that she was cooking dinner when she came outside to take some air, and that was it. But somewhere in South Carolina, 400 miles of the search grid, all she said is about to become the worst lie of 2026, and the woman telling it knows exactly what she's doing. Her name was Javeayah Harris. She was just a 4-year-old, and by the time her mother made that call, it was identified by investigators later that Javeayah had already been dead for about a month. I want you to recall on this again. For a full month, while 200 officers were walking in the woods, facing in 100-degree heat, while a helicopter circled overhead the area, while the FBI joined the search, while neighbors printed flyers with her face on them, somehow her mother and father knew, and they played the ultimate mind games anyway. Now, this is the story of how a 9-day search for a missing child turned into a homicide investigation. It's also the story of what happens when the people who are supposed to protect a child become the predators you have to protect her from. And it's the story of 2 prior police reports sitting quietly in a filing system that nobody connected until it was already too late. Wait a minute, I want you to understand something before we go any further. Everything we've covered in this video comes from arrest warrants, sworn statements, sheriff's press conferences, and court records. I am not going to guess at things nobody has confirmed. This case is disturbing enough without inventing or making anything up. It began on a Tuesday, June 30th, Aiken County, South Carolina. Michilae Herring, 22 years old, called 911 just before 9 at night. After the call, the dispatcher asked one important question. Does Javeayah had any health conditions? Herring mentioned autism, though she admitted no doctor had ever formally diagnosed it. She said her daughter was smart and was also talkative, that she could engage anyone with interesting conversations. She mentioned, almost immediately, that it's true she herself was 39 weeks pregnant and couldn't keep up with a fast 4-year-old the way she used to. The story was good. It's a believable story and sounds authentic. A tired, very pregnant mother, a curious toddler, a yard with no fence. This is the kind of thing we see often happening in small towns more than anyone likes to admit. However, the story got more interesting as law enforcement responded the way they should. Within hours, deputies were combing the area around Hillsborough Street and Ridgecrest Road. By the next morning, the case had grown. The FBI got involved, so did the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, the Highway Patrol, drone teams, canine units. More than 200 first responders eventually joined the search. A heat wave pushed the index near 100 degrees, and still people kept searching. Neighbors volunteered and walked ditches. A local Indian restaurant owner cooked and delivered 60 meals to search crews free of charge, because that's what a community does when a 4-year-old is missing. Then something clicked. On July 2nd, people in Aiken started asking a hard question. Why wasn't there an Amber Alert? The sheriff's office gave an answer that, in hindsight, it is almost unbearable to hear back. They said the case didn't meet the legal criteria for an Amber Alert. They said, and I'm going to get this close to exact, that they couldn't risk an untrained person missing a clue or accidentally causing harm. At the time, that sounded like caution. Looking back, it sounds like a system doing exactly what it was built to do and still failing a little girl anyway. By Friday, July 3rd, 3 days in, the visible search was scaled back, not because they'd found her, but because they'd run out of places to look that made sense for a wandering toddler. Okay then, see what happened on Saturday, July 4th. Sheriff Marty Sawyer stood in front of cameras and said words no parent should ever have to hear about someone else's child. That the investigation and the evidence led them to believe 4-year-old Javeayah Harris was already dead. Not missing, not lost, but dead. Within hours of that press release, both of her parents, Johmarea Harris, 23, and Michilae Herring, 22, were in handcuffs, charged with homicide by child abuse. Herring, additionally, with filing a false police report.
Here's the part that might cause you to throw up. The charge wasn't for something that happened that Tuesday night. The charge, rather, was built around a truth investigators had already started to piece together. That Javeayah had been dead for roughly a month before her mother ever thought of dialing 911. Which tells us that this family lived a normal life in front of their neighbors for weeks, while a search that would eventually be announced never needed to happen at all, because the child it was searching for was already gone.
This story is so bizarre.
I want to pause here, because before we go further into what happened to Javeayah, there's something we found out that you need to know.
Javeayah wasn't the first, and she won't be the last. This system is failing all of them.
Which never made it into the first wave of a story like this. 2 prior police reports, one from November in a nearby town called Clinton, a dispute between Herring and Harris after she called police because he tried to leave during an argument. Officers said it started over moving a table. The second from March of this year, right there in Aiken County, an argument that turned physical after Harris allegedly tried to force Herring out of her own car so he could use it. That report says the fight started over a hot dog. A hot dog. Herring didn't want to press charges, she just asked him to leave. Neither report mentions Javeayah. Neither one on its own predicts what was coming. But when you put them next to each other, you will immediately start to see a household that was already unstable, already documented by police twice in 7 months, and somehow nobody connected those dots to a 4-year-old girl living inside that instability. That's not a conspiracy. That's not corruption. That's just how these systems work. Reports get filed and filed away, and nobody's job is to ask whether the child in that home is safe unless someone specifically flags it. Nobody flagged it. If this is the kind of case that makes you angry in a way most true crime doesn't, the kind where the villain isn't a stranger in a mask, it's the people who were supposed to love her, go ahead and hit subscribe now, because what I'm about to tell you next is worse than anything I've said so far. On Monday, July 6th, arrest warrants became public, and in them, investigators used a phrase that's hard to shake. Both parents showed extreme indifference to human life. The warrants stated that Javeayah had suffered an injury from physical abuse. Abuse investigators linked the wounds to her mother, sometime between May 1st and June 15th, and neither parent sought medical care for her afterward. Not a hospital, not a doctor, nothing. According to those same warrants, both parents later confessed. That same day, the 911 call was released to the public by the police, and that's when this case stopped being a story about a missing child and became something much harder to wrap a head around. Because now you could hear it. You could hear a mother describing pink beads and Minnie Mouse pajamas with the same steady voice she'd used to describe any ordinary evening. Knowing what we know now, that call isn't a cry for help, it's a performance. So did it work? Yes, it worked for 9 days straight on hundreds of people who only wanted to bring a little girl home. Wait, there's another hit confession. On July 6th, something happened that didn't make every headline, but should have. Herring reportedly admitted she had disposed of Javeayah's body somewhere outside Aiken County. The location wasn't released to the public yet, but the search had already quietly expanded, first toward Union County, where records showed the couple had lived and been through eviction proceedings, then went deeper into Fairfield County, more than 80 miles from home. Investigators went back to the family home on July 7th. The crime scene tape was set up. They searched the house and the wooded area around it for hours. Sources told local reporters they weren't looking for Javeayah's body at that point. They were looking for evidence, which means by then they already suspected what they'd eventually confirm, that her body wasn't anywhere near that house anymore. Then on Thursday, July 9th, Sheriff Sawyer held another press conference, but this time he didn't just confirm a death. He described something bizarre, something that you, watching this video, would say is impossible. Investigators believe Javeayah's parents had used corrosive chemicals and other tools inside their own home to destroy her body. What remained, they allege, was driven more than 80 miles away and disposed of in a place called Cedar Creek Reservoir. Locals call it Stumpy Pond in Fairfield County. Some remains were recovered. DNA testing confirmed they were consistent with the biological child of Javeayah Harris and Michilae Herring. The sheriff said in his 37 years in law enforcement, he had never heard of anything this horrific. He said he would not call these two people mom and dad. He said they didn't deserve the title. Both parents now face additional charges, destruction and desecration of human remains, on top of homicide by child abuse. Both were already being held without bond. Neither had an attorney present at their bond hearings. The homicide charge alone carries 20 years to life. There's a detail in this case that I think about more than almost any other. Michilae Herring gave birth just days before her arrest. That baby, Javeayah's little sister, is now in the custody of her paternal grandmother. She will grow up never knowing the sister she should have had beside her. And she'll grow up in the shadow of parents who are, right now, sitting in jail cells, charged with destroying her sibling's body with chemicals bought, most likely from an ordinary hardware store. I want to be honest with you about what we don't know, because a case like this attracts theories, and theories aren't facts. Investigators have not said what caused Javeayah's initial injury, or why the alleged abuse happened at all. They have not confirmed whether one parent caused her death while the other only helped hide it, or whether they're treating this as something both parents actively did together. Nothing has linked the timing of Herring's pregnancy to the timing of the false report, and no evidence has been made public suggesting one. I'm not going to fill in those blanks for you. When investigators know more and it becomes a public record, that's when we'll know more too. There's also a petition circulating right now, pushing for something they're calling Javeayah's Law, an effort to close what organizers describe as a federal loophole in child protection. Whether it goes anywhere is impossible to say, but it's already outlived the news cycle that most stories like this get, and that alone tells you something about how deeply this one landed. If this story stayed with you the way it stayed with me, tell me in the comments what got to you the most, the 911 call, the 2 prior reports, or the 9 days it took to find the truth. And if you want to understand how systems like this keep missing kids who are right in front of them, stick around, because that's exactly what we're covering next.